Welcome back to another video on my channel, and today is lens review day for a Hasselblad lens I've not reviewed yet. And one lens I presented 2 times on my channel is the Hasselblad XCD 80mm. It's an absolutely fantastic lens for portraits, people, but you can also use it for landscape, getting a little bit of a compression effect in the images. And I think this is one of the best lenses you can purchase today in the market. Today I want to focus on a different Hasselblad lens, namely on the XCD 65 widest open f2.8. And that's in the same way as the 80mm lens from the XCD lineup from Hasselblad, an absolutely terrific lens. And I got this lens quite late last year because I was interested in it. I will share all the data points and the specifications in a moment. And it will also be a shorter video because I want to mainly show a couple of images I took with that lens for cityscapes, and in this way want to make a recommendation for Hasselblad shooters. So X1D, X1D Mark II, 907X. This is a lens you might want to consider for your lens portfolio. Let's get started. Before I show my shooting location and also then a couple or a few more of sample images, let's quickly walk through the specifications of that lens. And first of all, if you put it side by side with the 80mm lens, it's smaller, it's more compact, but it is absolutely in the spirit of a Hasselblad XCD lens. It is a full metal construction here. Listen to that. Very solid. It has the same build quality as all the other XCD lenses you know from my channel or from other occasions, and it is fully weather sealed, and it is a perfect match for the X1D Mark II, but also of course then for the X1D, and it also looks really good on the 907X, where you typically shoot at waist level. The weight of the lens is 727 grams, so it's not a super lightweight lens, but it's also not super heavy. The filter diameter here is 67mm, so you can use polar filters or you can also use neutral density filters, protectors, what have you. I typically protect these lenses because they are very valuable and their lifetime is going way off beyond the lifetime of a digital camera, of course, because these lenses have durability but also applicability over the cycle of many different cameras. Typically, whereas, cameras get older and get outdated from time to time. If you have a good glass, you can use it for the rest of your life. The aperture range you can see here in the live view, widest open f2.8, and then you can stop this down all the way to f32. So quite some range in terms of aperture you can cover here. Clearly, if you want to translate that lens into a full frame equivalent, 65mm on the Hasselblad system, applying a crop factor of 0.79, ends up at give or take a normal focal length of about 50mm, and that means it is the perfect field of view if you want to compare it with the human eyes, and it's very suitable for street photography, whereas the 80mm is a bit more in the portrait area, but also, as I said, for compressed landscape. The 65 is a true normal focal length and therefore kind of built for street photography and as an always-on lens on one of these camera bodies. Since you typically also need to apply the crop factor 0.79 to the aperture, widest open in a full frame equivalent setup is about an f2.2, and that means this lens can be shut wide open and lets in towards the sensor a lot of light. The minimum focusing distance from, let's say, a subject to the image plane is 50 centimeters, so 0.5 meter. So you get fairly close for a focal length of 65 in the Hasselblad system and about 51, 52mm in a full frame equivalent. And the maximum reproduction ratio or magnification ratio you have on that lens is 1 divided by 5.4, so close to 20%, which means you can also use this lens for close-up or macro type situations. The field of view of this lens in the diagonal dimension is 46 degrees, and that corresponds to a normal focal length, give or take, and means your angle of view or your field of view is a bit more narrow, but is wide enough, and as I said before, roughly corresponds with the field of view you have on your own eyes. As always on the Hasselblad X system, if you use autofocus, it is a bit laggy, but it is very reliable, it works really good, and if the focus sits, it sits where it's supposed to sit. but you have to be a bit patient. I use these lenses and camera combinations very often also with manual focus, in particular when using it on a tripod, as in the situation I will show in a moment, and for the sample images you will see in the course of the video. Before coming to sample images, as I said, I want to inspire people to consider, if you are a Hasselblad shooter, if that lens might be for you. Let me make one last remark, and that's the following. The lens is fully weather sealed, but it's not an in-lens focusing mechanism. And you can see this here, how the lens is moving up and down, and the focusing doesn't happen within the lens tube comes out a little bit in focusing, and that is something which concerns sometimes people. I can confirm this lens is fully weather sealed, and even if the lens tube is coming out a bit when you focus, it's not taking away or discounting the full weather sealing of the lens, in combination of course also with the X system cameras. So without further ado, let's look into the sample images and the shooting location. The location is a hill where you can overlook Zurich downtown and the lake and the mountains, so the Swiss Alps in the background. And since a 65mm focal length on a Hasselblad system, give or take 51, 52 on a full frame equivalent, already has incorporated some tele effect, it brings the different layers in the dimensions of the image closer together, so you get a very nice image composition. Here's the first image of two images I wanted to show in this video, and that's the view you have from that perfect shooting location. And you see a bit the compression effect coming from an almost tele situation here. So the city, the lake and the mountains in the background, they appear closer together than they really are. If you would take that image with a wide angle lens, you would hardly see the Swiss Alps in the background. And I think this is a very good image, in particular if you look into the details. So let's crop in here by 100%, and there is so much to discover in this image here. It's just one of my most favorite images from the last months. So many things to see, and such a clean, clear representation of what was in front of the camera in the scene. And that is something which you achieve typically with the perfect sensors in the Hasselblad X system, in combination with the corresponding excellent lenses, and in this particular case with the Hasselblad XCD 65mm f2.8. Here's the second image I wanted to show, and here I did a high resolution panorama stitching with several frames. And if you look at my shooting parameters, this is a 32-second exposure at f8.0, an ISO of 100, and the resolution is 22.3K times 5.4K. So that equates, give or take, to 120 megapixel. And let's have a look for a moment into the details this image is providing. Let's crop into 100% and walk around a little bit in that scene in front of the camera. All in, the XCD 65mm f2.8 is another excellent lens for Hasselblad X system shooters, and I can fully recommend it. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up, stay tuned on my channel, There's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.